A young couple stood in my living room on a Sunday afternoon, admiring the curtains my late wife sewed by hand, while a realtor in a navy blazer told them the seller was very motivated. The realtor was my son-in-law. The house was mine. And as far as he knew, I was flat on my back in a rehab facility across town, learning to walk again after hip surgery, signing whatever paper got slid under my hand. He had 8 of my rental houses in his sights, and 3 of them already listed. What he did not know was that I had been out of that facility for 2 hours, that the man beside me in the doorway was not a home buyer, and that the folder under my arm was about to empty that open house faster than a fire alarm. My name is Hank Sullivan. I am 71 years old, from Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I have spent my whole life fixing what other people gave up on. Before I go further, tell me in the comments what city you are watching from, because I answer as many as these old fingers allow, and it does me good to know who is out there. And listen close to this story, because the trap that almost took everything from me is one I walked into with my own pen in my own hand. Nobody forged a thing. That is what makes it worth telling. I bought my first house at 26, half a duplex on Maple Avenue with a caved gutter and a furnace that sounded like a dying animal, and I fixed it nights and weekends until somebody was willing to pay rent to live in the other half. Then I did it again. 40 years later, I owned 8 rental houses in this town. Every one of them bought tired and brought back to life with these 2 hands. I never thought of myself as a rich man. I thought of myself as a repairman who happened to hold the deeds. My first landlord, an old fellow named Gus who sold me that duplex, gave me one piece of advice with the keys, and I have tested it against every tenant, every contract, and every buyer since. He said, "Hank, you can tell everything about a man by how he treats a house that isn't his." Gus was right for 40 years straight. My wife Nora kept the books at our kitchen table and sewed the curtains for every unit we owned, because she said a home should look loved from the street. She passed 4 years ago, and I stayed in our half of that first duplex on Maple, because her curtains still hang in the front window, and I am not a man who moves away from things like that. Our daughter Megan married a fellow named Blake, a realtor, all handshake and cologne, and at Thanksgiving one year I made the mistake a proud old man makes. I walked him through the whole portfolio, every address, every paid-off deed. I thought I was showing my son-in-law what work builds. What I was actually doing was handing a hungry man a menu. The fall happened in March, and it happened because I am stubborn. Dottie Pruitt, my tenant on Green Ridge Street for 22 years, called about a gutter pulling loose over her porch. I could have sent a crew. I climbed the ladder myself, the way I always have. The 3rd rung from the top let go of the ladder, or my hip let go of me, and I honestly cannot tell you which came first. I woke up in regional with a new titanium hip and a machine beeping next to my head. The surgeon said the operation went fine. He also said 6 weeks of rehab, minimum, and no stairs, no driving, no ladders. For a man with 8 houses and rent due on the 1st, that sentence landed harder than the driveway did. Blake showed up at the hospital the very next morning. Flowers for the nightstand, coffee for the nurses. He pulled a chair right up to my bed and got to the point, and I will admit the point sounded reasonable. "Hank, rent is due in 9 days. The water bills, the insurance, the furnace guy, somebody has to keep the lights on while you heal. Let me carry it. You just get better." Then he opened a folder he already had with him, and there was a power of attorney inside, filled out, flagged with little sticky arrows, and a mobile notary waiting out in the hallway like a cab with the meter running. I want to be honest with you about that moment. I was 2 days off the operating table. There was a pump in my arm feeding me something for the pain that made the whole room feel wrapped in cotton. A young nurse named Camille was standing right there checking my chart when I signed, and Blake told the notary I had already read every page at home. I had never seen those pages in my life. But it was rent week, and he was family, and I signed. They moved me to the rehab place out on Keyser Avenue that Friday. Megan visited on Sundays and told me not to worry about a thing. Blake had it all handled, and for a while I let those words work on me like the pain pump. Then the little things started arriving. Stan, my tenant over on Prescott, called my cell to ask why some man had told him to send rent to a new account. When I asked Blake, he smiled and said he had consolidated everything into one management account to keep it clean for me. Clean for me. Then my furnace guy called, confused, because the work orders I had standing at 3 properties had all been canceled to save money. I have never once saved money on a furnace in 40 years because cold tenants leave. I lay in that rehab bed at night, doing the same arithmetic I used to do on ladders. Something was carrying a load the wrong way. And then, on a Tuesday, Dottie Pruitt came through my door with a loaf of banana bread and changed everything. She sat down, patted my hand, asked about the hip, and then she said the sentence that stopped my heart. "Hank, I don't want to be nosy, but should I be looking for a new place, with the house going up for sale and all?" I asked her to say that again. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a glossy paper flyer, the kind realtors leave in a plastic box on a signpost, and she laid it on my blanket. It was not her house on that flyer. It was mine. My duplex on Maple Avenue. Nora's curtains right there in the photograph of the front window, listed for sale, price to move, and at the bottom, smiling in a navy blazer, the listing agent, Blake. Dottie said a young man had put a sign in her yard too, and one on Prescott Street, and that people had walked through her kitchen on Saturday, taking pictures of her stove. 3 of my houses were on the market, including the one I live in, and I found out from a 79-year-old widow with a loaf of banana bread. I called Megan first, because I wanted to be wrong. She did not even sound surprised. She said, "Dad, Blake told me you two talked it through, that you agreed it was time to downsize the portfolio, with your hip and everything." He told her I agreed. He was selling my life out from under me, and using my own daughter to deliver the anesthetic. I sat there holding that flyer, and old Gus came back to me across 40 years. You can tell everything about a man by how he treats a house that isn't his. Blake had canceled the heat, squeezed the tenants, and hung a price tag on a widow's porch. Now, I could see the man entirely. That night I barely slept, and at 8 the next morning I dialed a phone number that has not changed in 30 years. The number belonged to Arthur Boone, the lawyer who closed my very first duplex when we were both young men with bad haircuts, and who has handled every deed I have signed since. He came to the rehab facility that same afternoon, sat down next to my bed with a legal pad, and listened to all of it without once interrupting. Then he gave it to me straight, which is the only way Arthur knows. He said, "Hank, here is your problem. Nothing was forged. That signature is yours. The notary stamp is real, and a recorded power of attorney with real estate powers means Blake can list, negotiate, and sign at a closing table without you in the room." Then he flipped to a fresh page. And here is his problem. A power of attorney is not a deed. It is borrowed authority, and borrowed authority can be taken back. He asked me one question that mattered more than all the rest. Had anything actually closed? I told him what the flyer said. Offers reviewed this week. Arthur made 2 calls from the hallway, and when he came back, his face had changed. "There is an accepted offer on the Maple Avenue duplex," he said. "Your house. Closing is scheduled in 12 days. So that became our clock, and this is what we did with it. And I want you to hear how simple it was, because simple is what saves you. First, that same evening, Arthur brought his own notary to my bed, and I signed a revocation of the power of attorney, 1 page, witnessed properly, and by noon the next day, it was recorded at the county courthouse, and hand-delivered to my bank and to the title company handling the sale. From that minute, Blake's borrowed authority was dead paper. Second, Arthur filed what is called a lis pendens on all 3 listed properties, which is a notice nailed right onto the public record that says this title is disputed, and no title company in America will insure a sale with that flag flying, which means no buyer's bank will fund one. Third, we built the file. Camille, the nurse, remembered the signing clear as day, remembered Blake telling the notary I had read everything, and the hospital's own medication log showed exactly what was running into my arm that morning and how much. Arthur said any judge would take one look at that log and ask why a man in that condition was signing anything but a lunch menu. And fourth, there was the rent. 2 months of it, from 7 tenants, sitting in an account with Blake's name on it. Arthur called that conversion, and he called it leverage, and he asked me how hard I wanted to swing. I thought about Megan. I told him I wanted my houses, my rent, and that man out of my family's pockets, and I did not need a jail to get it. Arthur nodded slowly, and then he asked the question that shaped the ending of this story. The open house on Maple is this Sunday, he said. He does not know the revocation exists yet. Would you like to tell him there, or shall I mail it? I looked at that man like he had offered me a birthday present. Mail it, I said, after Sunday. And Arthur, make one more call for me. Invite my daughter to the open house. Sunday came up sunny. The facility gave me a day pass, and my physical therapist would want you to know I arrived on a cane, not a walker, because I had spent 2 weeks working toward exactly this walk. Arthur drove. There were balloons on my own mailbox. Balloons. We came through the front door of my house at 2:10, into the smell of cookies Blake had baked in Nora's oven to sell her kitchen, and a young couple was standing by the front window admiring her curtains, while Blake told them the seller was very motivated and this one would not last the week. Then he turned around and saw me, and I watched the color leave that man's face floor by floor, like a building going dark. Folks, I said to the couple, gentle as I could, I am the seller. Nobody told me I was motivated. I lifted my key ring, 40 years of labeled brass, and set it on the mantel. These are the keys to this house, I said, and this gentleman is my attorney. Arthur handed the couple's agent 2 pages, the recorded revocation and the lis pendens, and I will tell you, real estate agents can read faster than anybody alive when their commission is on the page. That living room emptied in 4 minutes flat. Blake tried 3 voices on me, one after another. First the salesman, Hank, let's not do this in front of people. Then the victim, I was helping you. This is the thanks. Then the last one, the honest one, low and mean. You signed it. Old man, it's legal. Megan is on board, and you can't undo a signed instrument. And right on time, from the doorway behind him, my daughter's voice said, on board with what, Blake? She had heard it, all of it, the way Arthur and I intended. And then she asked the question I had been saving for a courtroom. She said, what management account, Blake? Our statements come to the house and there is no management account. The silence that followed told her more than a year of Sundays had told her. I did not raise my voice once. I walked out to my own front lawn, gripped the for sale sign with my free hand, rocked it loose the way you pull a fence post, and laid it down flat in the grass. Then I sat on my own porch steps, in the sun, and let Arthur do what I pay him for. What Arthur did over the next month was quiet and complete. Faced with the nurse's memory, the medication log, and 2 months of tenant rent sitting in an account with his name on it, Blake's lawyer advised him to settle everything before anyone said the word prosecutor out loud. Every dollar of rent came back, with interest. Every listing came down. He signed a release, walking away from any claim on anything of mine, forever. And then I did the one thing I had promised myself on that rehab bed, the thing that fit the crime like a key fits a lock. I did not send him to jail. I sent a letter, with Arthur's help and every document attached, to the State Real Estate Commission, because that man had used his license, the tool of his trade, to hang price tags on houses he had no right to touch. They opened a case, they held a hearing, and by autumn Blake was no longer licensed to sell so much as a parking space in the state of Pennsylvania. He used his profession as the weapon, so his profession is what he lost. To my mind, that is not revenge. That is just the bill arriving. Megan filed for separation in the summer. She did not do it for me, and I want to be honest about that. She did it because she pulled the bank records herself. Every statement Blake had rerouted away from their house, and she needed to see it in his own handwriting before she could believe it. And I understand that better than she knows, because I needed a flyer on my hospital blanket before I believed it either. In September, she moved into the other half of the duplex on Maple, the same unit she took her first steps in, and some evenings we drink coffee on the shared porch and don't talk much, and that is its own kind of healing. Dottie Pruitt got a new gutter, installed by a crew this time, and a letter from me promising her rent will never go up as long as I am above ground. She earned that 22 years ago and pays it forward in banana bread. Nora's curtains still hang in the front window, and when I walk up Maple Avenue on my evening therapy walks, cane and all, I can see them from the corner, and the house looks loved from the street, just like she wanted. Old Gus told me, you can tell everything about a man by how he treats a house that isn't his, and Blake proved it the ugly way. But this whole business taught me the other side of that coin. Dottie treated a rented house like it was precious for 22 years, and a nurse named Camille stood up for a patient who wasn't her kin. And by Gus's own measure, the two of them turned out to be more family to me than the man who married my daughter. Before I let you go, take this with you, because it is the reason I told this story. If you are ever flat on your back in a hospital bed, and somebody you love slides a power of attorney under your hand, do not sign a general one, no matter how much you trust them. Ask for a limited one job, one account, one season, with your lawyer's name on the paperwork, because the pen they hand you in that bed can lift more weight than any crowbar. Love the people at your bedside, but read the pages, or have somebody outside the family read them for you. Now tell me in the comments, has anyone ever tried to use your own signature against you, and how did you find out? Tell me what city you are watching from, because I read every single one from this porch. And if this story is worth an hour of somebody's time, share it with a friend who is heading into a hospital, and subscribe, because I am not done telling the truth yet.